Good afternoon, and welcome to today's session of the AIB. We are coming together today on the 21st of March. We have a fairly robust agenda today. I'm going to make just a couple of comments, followed by the adoption of our meeting summaries for the last two sessions. Let me again thank all of you for the hard work and the great participation that we've had on a number of fronts, especially our hardworking executive director. Britt and I, at least board member Corinne and I, have been working hand in glove with her on a number of sessions and meetings with legislators, attending work sessions, public hearings, and meeting with various organizations around the state to have some issues and questions may have developed at this time of the year. We have legislative sessions to respond to any questions and issues. And when you have a document and a mandate as large as the AIB, it is really quite challenging at times to get to all of the concerns that may develop. But I am quite pleased with the working relationship we've had with the state board. Many of the organizations that are assisting in terms of implementing the agenda for us in terms of the AIB and all of the concerns that we have with the blueprint. Despite the fact that it's an awful lot of work, it's a great deal of coordination with a number of entities, that we are moving forward in a very, very spirited way. And I think that we're having a great deal of success in laying the foundation. But what I believe would be a very strong effort and with positive results for students throughout this great state. It is a massive undertaking. Spent an awful lot of time to put together the plan. We've laid the foundation for the plan, and we've now started to implement that plan. And whenever you get to the point of implementation, there are always some challenges, issues, and late development. We've had to on occasion make some adjustments, as we've noted, in terms of legislation, to dot the I's, cross the T's. But what we have done has not been a comprehensive wholesale change, in my opinion, of any of the very strong tenets of the blueprint itself. But with any legislation covering as many subject areas that we have under the umbrella of education, there's always some room for improvements and adjustments therein. And that's what we try to do. We still maintain our position that if there are to be changes, at least significant changes, we want to see very strong evidence and proof as to why we should do that. Because we're going to try to implement this with as much fidelity as possible, but minor changes and adjustments as we go forward, we're willing to look at and work with our partners in order to ensure that we have the best efficiency as we possibly can have. And so with that, again, I want to thank our executive director, thank the state board, the state superintendent, all of those we've worked with for the last few years, last year or two, for the tremendous amount of work and cooperation that we've had in order to get us to this point. The first thing we're going to do this afternoon is to adopt the minutes from the last two sessions, which was, I think, the 15th and 27th. I hope that everyone has had an opportunity to look at them. If so, I can entertain a motion for approval of the summaries for the 15th and the 27th. I assume we could do those together from our attorney, or we have to do them separately.
As long as nobody has any objections or wanted to vote in a different way, it does not appear that anybody does, but if they did, they could indicate now. Otherwise, you can take them together.
I'd like to so move, Mr. Chairman.
On both the 15th and the 27th?
Yes.
All right, there's a second to the motion to approve the summaries for both the 15th and 27th. There's a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and properly second. Any discussion, the comments, or additions to the agenda? I'm sorry, additions to the summaries that we'd like to make at this point in time? Hearing none? Okay, all in favor, please by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. In opposition? Hearing none, the summaries are so approved. You have the agenda before you. I'm not sure whether or not there's any additions or changes that anyone would like to make a comment about before we proceed accordingly. If not, we're going to go to our public comments. I understand we have.
Mr. Chair, can we quickly do the roll call first?
Oh, sure, I'm sorry. I thought.
That's okay.
All right.
Just for the record, we have Chair Leggett present, Vice Chair Kerwin, and members Doss, Robinson, and Lynch. We are expecting Mr. Manco. I think he just joined. There we go. And Mr. Manco. So we have 6 present, 1 absent, board member Stapleton.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, we're now ready for our public comments. Could you call our first presenter?
Yes.
And
if we can let him in. The first person who has signed up for a public comment is Dr. Eubanks from the University of Maryland College Park campus. And Dr. Eubanks, we've many of us know him and have had presentations with him prior. So welcome, Dr. Eubanks.
Thank you very much. Very happy to be here today. Chair Leggett, members of the AIB, Executive Director Heiss, great to see you. AIB staff members, thanks again for the opportunity to address you this afternoon. As mentioned, I'm Segun Eubanks, and at the University of Maryland College Park, I serve as a professor of practice and director for the Center for Educational Innovation and Improvement in the College of Education. I offer greetings on behalf of Dean Kimberly Griffin and our colleagues in the College of Education. Our research, scholarship, and advocacy are working to advance the ideals and implement the promises offered by the Maryland Blueprint. Our team has been carefully observing the implementation of the Blueprint, and for this testimony in particular, I'd like to focus on the Teacher Career Ladder. As you may know, we recently published the University of Maryland Teacher Career Ladder Framework, an online tool that was developed explicitly to support all Maryland LEAs in creating comprehensive career ladder models that align to the Blueprint legislation. This framework is free and available on our website. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have about the framework. Now, over the course of developing this framework, we've talked to teachers, association leaders, and education stakeholders from across the state. We've developed a deep understanding and excitement for the promise of teacher career ladders, as well as a profound sense of just how challenging the design and implementation of career ladders will be. Frankly, we've heard more than a fair share of skepticism about many elements of this ambitious agenda. Now, we know that in the next few months, you'll be making important decisions about the direction of the teacher career ladders and that there are compelling calls to make changes. As you navigate these implementation decisions, we encourage you to stay the course and maintain the core of the vision and strategies outlined in the Blueprint. Listening and responding to the field, as well as creating time for transformation to occur, is essential. Abandoning the vision in response to fear of change, lack of creative thinking, or misunderstanding would be a monumental mistake. We encourage the AIB and their colleagues in the Maryland State Department of Education to be collaborative, proactive, and clear in communicating with educators and education leaders, particularly at the school level, about the promise and opportunity offered by the career ladder. Most educators we talk to simply don't know enough about the opportunities and flexibility that could be offered to them individually, or about the impact it could have on the education profession and the students we serve. As far as I'm concerned, the Blueprint is the most ambitious and transformative state education policy initiative of our generation. For those of us who believe deeply in equity and the promise of a world-class education, we must see it succeed. I thank you for your willingness to serve on the AIB and for your impact on the 900,000 public school students across Maryland. Thank you very much and have a great meeting.
Thank you. I think one quick question, Dr. Eubanks. This question goes to just on the career ladder, and I thank you for the comments and the commission headed by Dr. Curran and others helped put this ambitious agenda together. In terms of comparison of the career ladder, the model and the framework that you, and thank you for that work. Were there any comparisons to other places that you would like to highlight for analysis for us?
So during our work, we looked at teacher career ladder models across the country and even here in Maryland. We spent a lot of time with Baltimore, with Denver Public Schools, and with others. There are some similarities in design. First, there's certainly, this is unprecedented to implement on a state level as far as anything that we've seen. Any other career ladder models that we've engaged with, at least in the American context, have been district-based programs. There are some that include national board, but few that have kind of centered the model around national board in as ambitiously as we have. But other than that, and again, I think none that have kind of put this kind of comprehensive resourcing behind the initiative.
Thank you. Any other further questions or comments? If not, thank you. And thanks again for the model that you provided for us. A great deal of work, and should be congratulated for the efforts that you put in to help us to better understand the model that we will have and trying to adopt here in Maryland. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Priscilla Young, who is a school counselor with the Anne Arundel County Public Schools. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak this afternoon. Good afternoon. My name is Sue Young, and I am an NBCT school counselor serving 540 students at Belvedere Elementary School in Anne Arundel County Public Schools. The students I serve are from both our typically developing classrooms from K to 5th grade and ECI, Early Childhood Intervention for 3-year-olds with special needs, pre-K students, 2 regional ACC alternative curriculum classrooms, and 1 self-contained classroom. I am the single school counselor for all 540 students. I also hold 3 different national certifications in my field of school counseling, and am here today in support of clarifying and formally recognizing the NBCT school counselors be included in the Maryland Blueprint. Before it was the Maryland Blueprint, a colleague and I served on an educator cabinet with the Kerwin Commission led by Delegate Kane to inform lawmakers about how school counselors' role impacts students in schools. We have continued to advocate for equitable representation of our role in the Maryland Blueprint and associated $10,000 salary enhancement granted to classroom teachers. We have advocated at both local and state levels. I have attached several recent testimonies to this document. I'll send that as an email right after this. In an email, and in addition to an email I sent to the AIB on November 16th, 2022. It seems that most are in agreement that this is inequitable and was not the original intent of the Maryland Blueprint. We are, as school counselors, required by Comar law to deliver direct services to students 80% of our time. We are the only mental health providers in our school buildings that work with every single student in our buildings. We are also the only position in the Maryland Blueprint that is directly associated with all 5 pillars of the Maryland Blueprint. And yet we continue to be excluded from the benefits granted other school-based employees in the Maryland Blueprint. AACPS has a long-standing policies and regulations about equity in our schools. As an entire school system, we strive to put words and ideas into action when it comes to equitable practices. I believe that in my role as a school counselor and also as equity lead for over 16 years, impacting the adults through this leadership also supports my students. We have the specific agreement in these meetings about how we will interact with one another during these equity meetings. One of the core agreements that we agree to is focus on impact, not intent. This is important and also aligns with the goals of the AIB in relation to the Maryland Blueprint. We have to look at the impact that students directly receive, and sometimes we need some help from you and the lawmakers to clarify this with the adults who are deciding who is in and who is out of the Maryland Blueprint. This week, a former student of mine from my previous elementary school reached out. She is now completing her bachelor's degree at University of Maryland, considering a master's in school counseling, and requested a shadow opportunity with me. Her email included an excellent example of impact. Quote, I remember you as my safe person at school and honestly my overall influence on my interest in this field." End quote. I was her school counselor 10 years ago and had not spoken to her since the 5th grade promotion ceremony. Good intent alone without meaningful and equitable action does not create the impact we are seeking through the Maryland Blueprint. We have been advocated on top of our very challenging jobs with high caseloads, and yet we continue to not be included in most of our local counties. Last weekend, I was at the Maryland School Counselor Annual Conference. I learned that 4 of the 24 Maryland school districts are honoring and giving school counselors the 10K salary enhancement. 8 provide salary enhancements from $2,000 to $5,000, and the remaining 12 districts do not give any salary enhancements to NBCT school counselors. My district does not give any salary enhancements, and the stipends I used to get that were $1,000 to $2,000 for my other 2 counseling-related national certifications, I no longer receive because they are no longer funding those stipends. Without the AIB leadership making this very clear to all districts across Maryland, the inequity continues to grow. I do not believe it was the intent of the Maryland Blueprint, but it is the current impact. NBCT school counselors are an excellent investment. During your AIB meeting on February 13th, 2024, you heard from a 7th grade student in Howard County, Lev R., couldn't catch her last name, who gave an incredible testimony to this group. I watched the video. We make impacts on students like Lev and the example I shared with you every day. We work diligently every day to include, encourage, and motivate our students. As employees, we also deserve to be included, encouraged to reach the very highest levels of expertise, and rewarded for those achievements. I am asking that you clarify the intent of the blueprint so that it is understood that we provide both preventative, which is teaching, and responsive counseling to all of our students, and that we deserve to be fully included as NBCT school counselors. Thank you very much for your time, and I will send this written document to me, and I've also linked in some of the other recent testimonies so that you have access to those as well.
Thank you. Are there any
Thank you.
questions? Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Next, we have Ria Gupta from Strong Schools, Maryland.
Hello, Chair Leggett, Vice Chair Kerwin, and members of the Accountability and Implementation Board. My name is Ria Gupta. I'm the policy researcher with Strong Schools Maryland. As implementation and session are in full swing, we wanted to use this time as an opportunity to update you on some of the action the Strong Schools team has been taking in terms of blueprint education and engagement. Zero-sum advocates in media like Fox 45 and some county leaders who fail to fund their schools at anything but the bare minimum are misrepresenting the blueprint, specifically its cost, so they can walk back their part in Maryland's promise to its students and school communities. When they do this, they fail to recognize that we all lose when we don't adequately fund our public schools and programming like the blueprint. We can see this happening in real time with 1/3 of counties providing just the bare minimum in local education funding this year. That is why Strong Schools Maryland has been hosting blueprint budget workshops across the state, where we educate attendees on the overarching aspects of the law, dive into the structure of education funding and the formula, and offer solutions to the state's revenue shortfall. As budget season is wrapping up, we will be hosting a few more workshops, like one in Dorchester County this evening at 5 p.m. We also have a workshop in Montgomery County on March 27th and a virtual workshop on March 28th. The public listening in can find information about these workshops on our website, strongschoolsmaryland.org, or at bit.ly/blueprintbudget2024. We would love for you to join us. As for you, board members, we invite you to join us at our Montgomery County budget workshop next week. Strong Schools Maryland and our statewide network are excited to continue our partnership with the Accountability and Implementation Board as you work to realize the blueprint's promise of world-class schools for every student in the state. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Could I make a comment, Mr. Chair?
Sure. Yes, please.
I just want to thank you for this effort to educate the larger community about blueprint funding. There is a tremendous amount of misinformation out there, and it continues to be replicated even by some of our media organizations. And so your efforts are just very, very much appreciated. So I first wanted to say that. Secondly, where will the session in Montgomery County be held?
I am pulling that up right now, but it is gonna be in Montgomery County in Rockville, I believe.
Uh-huh.
Let me get you the exact address and I will send it to all of you after. It's gonna be at the Montgomery County Child Care Support Services Building in the county.
Okay, thank you.
I
Yes,
will send you all emails after with the invite.
thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rhea.
Okay, who's next?
Last, we have Kimberly McDonald, who is also, I believe, a school counselor with Calvert County Public Schools. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you listening to my public comment. Good afternoon, Chair Leggett, members of the AIB. I appreciate the opportunity to speak on behalf of school counselors. My name is Kimberly Carr McDonald. I'm a high school counselor in Calvert County Public Schools. I've been a member of the Calvert County community for almost 11 years and served as a school counselor for the past 20. In 2010, I attained national board certification in the area of school counseling. In 2019, I renewed my national boards with the understanding that there would be no financial compensation or rewards, as this was the case in Calvert County Public Schools. But it was important for me to uphold the standard of education and to continue to provide top-notch research-based services to my school community. In the Blueprint for Maryland's Future, one of the programs includes increasing the salary by $10,000 for participating national board certified teachers who are teachers actively teaching in Maryland public schools. However, school counselors are excluded from this program because our role is not clearly defined in the Blueprint. I'm not eligible to receive the same salary increase for the same national board certification I achieved alongside other educators. So I've been asking, how is this equitable and fair to compensate some professionals who hold certification, but deny the same compensation for other professionals who hold the same certification? It's important to emphasize that school counselors are educators. We deliver counseling lessons to students in assemblies, classes, small groups, and individually. We provide education and resources to families in the form of presentations as well as smaller formats. Teaching takes place in many entities to include an auditorium, a classroom, and our offices. Whereas the Blueprint defines teachers as teaching in the classroom setting, school counselors are not limited as such. Upon polling all school counselors in Calvert County Public Schools, over 60% indicated they would pursue national board certification if included in the Blueprint, receiving the same salary increase and compensation. So imagine across Maryland, if other counties had similar statistics, the percentage of highly qualified school counselors to provide vital services to our students and members of school communities would be astoundingly impactful. This is an incredible figure for a data-driven organization, the National Board for Professional Teaching Standards, that has shown much qualitative and quantitative success to the level that Maryland legislators are promoting teachers to pursue this endeavor. So it's critical to recruit and retain highly qualified school counselors, especially in the increasing climate of mental health needs, as well as the changing demands of students' lives. So providing competitive and equitable salaries is a significant component to this need. So I'm requesting for members of the AIB to include school counselors in the Blueprint so that we would receive equally compensatory funds for any nationally board certified teacher excluded from this program. It's critical to send the message that all educators who are nationally board certified are equally valued and equally compensated. So my national board certification is no different from my teacher colleagues, since we all receive our credentialing by NBPTS. The school counseling profession is critical to the well-being and education of others, and a consistent message needs to be sent from governing practices. So I'm asking for you to advocate for including and clearly defining school counselors in the Blueprint, particularly in the national board salary increase. I do appreciate your continued leadership and consideration of this matter.
Thank you. Any comments or questions? If not, thank you, ma'am. Appreciate your testimony.
Thank you.
I think that closes the session for today on public comments. I want to thank everyone for their participation. If you're interested in future opportunities, please contact our office to let us know, and we'll be glad to accommodate you at the next board meeting. At this point in time, we're going to go to agenda item 3, which is our policy focus, which is on Pillar 2 this time. So I'm going to turn
Mr. Chair, if I could just make the introductions here. As we talked at the last board meeting, we're going to rotate and each month focus a section of the agenda on a piece of the blueprint pillars. And last month we started with pillar 1, and today we are focusing on pillar 2. As we, the blueprint is all about continuous improvement. And so we are continuing to evolve in terms of what these segments look like. And so we wanted to start with an introduction to the pillar by the AIB board member who is the liaison to the Pillar Advisory Committee. And then we also, staff has a brief presentation to share, and then we will move into the discussion from the Advisory Committee Pillar 2 members, who I think we could also let in now if they're available. And so with that, Board Member Justin Robinson is the liaison to Advisory Committee 2, Pillar 2. And so, Member Robinson, did you want to make any opening comments?
Absolutely. Thank you for setting up this introduction, Rachel. And hello, everyone. I have the honor of introducing the presentation from the Pillar 2 Advisory Committee. Before doing so, I just want to share a bit about the work they have been tasked with completing. As you all know, back in 2016, the Maryland General Assembly established the Commission on Innovation and Excellence in Education, and it passed unanimously because it represented a commitment to equitably provide for the education of all of Maryland's children. The Kerwin Commission, as it came to be called, looked at funding formulas and policies that would benefit public education and organized them into 5 pillars. Within each pillar are a number of initiatives that represent shifts in public education. These shifts were not arbitrary, but rather based on best practices from high-performing states and countries. When it comes to improving education for students, one aspect was having high-quality and diverse teachers and administrators. The collection of these initiatives is Pillar 2. In order to have high-quality teachers, the Commission studied what was happening in high-performing school systems. They found many and included them in what would become the blueprint for Maryland's future. What I've appreciated about this committee is that they've been very intentional about looking at all of the strategies that are intended to improve the quality of teachers, which includes teacher prep, grow your own programs that help certify former paraprofessionals or substitutes as teachers, and the teacher career ladder. It's been my pleasure hearing their insight and learning what exciting things are happening across the state of Maryland, especially as it relates to improving the state's core of teachers. So with that, I think I'm turning it over to staff.
Thank you. As I'm working to share my screen here, can you see the slides yet?
We see your whole desktop.
Well, I bet that looks chaotic. Shawanda, if you could share the slides, it looks like it's not going to let me.
Rachel, can you stop sharing?
Yeah, I'm trying. Geez.
There you go.
The right ones came up now?
Yes.
Oh, shoo. All right. We were practicing this before and it was glitchy, but all right, we're on the right one here. Oh no, that is Shawanda's. Great. Thank you. Okay, so Justin, fabulous. Thank you for kicking us off with the importance of this pillar and what's encompassed within it. It has many components that we've been digging into, and today you'll get to hear directly from three of the advisory committee members, we wanted to take a few minutes to kind of back up and high level. The focus, as Justin said, is high quality and diverse teachers and leaders. There are three broad goals that we've put on the screen, which he also alluded to, that we're encompassing our teacher prep candidates, our teachers, and our leaders, and that includes retention efforts and recruiting efforts. We situate that in the national struggle with the teacher staffing crisis that we have found ourselves in. And Shawanda, if you could go to the next slide. We are excited to bring, there we go, some great data and some fast facts to share with you. We, on social media, coined these blueprint in action, where we see our success and where we're excited to share numbers of where blueprint is taking off. And the first one is the number of teachers pursuing national board certification. You can see I'm almost going to call it exponential growth, where we went from 711 candidates in fiscal year 22 to 2,372 in fiscal year 23. So we have observed great interest in the program, and many of our Maryland educators are now knee-deep in pursuing and getting ready to submit for this year, whether it's a component, multiple components, or all of their national board work. To that, in December, when the national boards released their data, 718 Maryland teachers achieved for the first time their national board certification, and 281 educators renewed or maintained their certification. So that was a total of 999 that got news, positive news from the national boards in December about achieving and maintaining, and that's nearly 1,000 additional nationally board certified teachers in our classrooms in front of our students. With that number, we also bring you some information about conditional teachers in Maryland.
Rachel?
Yes.
Before you move, do you happen to know how many national board certified teachers total we have in the state?
That is a moving target. I will get you some good information. It's hard to.
Yeah, I realize it changes every day, but roughly.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't have it at my fingertips, but we will get it and share it from MSCE. We've got a couple different numbers, but yes.
Thank you.
We look at our conditional teachers in Maryland as part of our pipeline of our teachers. These are the educators that are in our classroom right now that are filling the gap where we've had this shortage. They are a huge part of our retention and recruitment efforts. You'll see that that number has trended up in the last few years. We went from 2,312 in fiscal year 21 to this current year of having 5,000. So that's a large number, and in collaboration with our partners, we are increasing conversations around supporting our conditional educators, thinking about the specific trainings that they need and the support that they need so that we can retain these folks in our classrooms. We also added a little bit of data there to help you see that this varies across the state. So we're looking at it regionally and by county, and we notice that 7 of our counties across the state have actually stabilized or actually decreased the number of conditional teachers that they have. And that includes a mix of small counties and large counties. So it's sometimes very dependent on where we're talking about what the conditional teacher status looks like. Are there any questions about either of those topics before we move on? Okay, Shawanda, can you advance to the next? Perfect. So what's coming up in Pillar 2? And I failed to mention when the computer was acting up that our policy analyst, Debbie Zebu, is here with us and can help chime in on a lot of these. We were excited for her to join our team in January, and she's done a fabulous job of digging in and understanding everything that's happening in Pillar 2 and helping us support the work. We've been working with our principals around the state. In the fall, we joined an annual conference that NAESP and MASSP jointly hosted. And then back in February, we had joined an assistant principal conference, and we presented and shared particularly around Pillar 2 and how it relates to administrators. we learned in those sessions that they're craving more information. And so we are preparing in April to resume with some convenings, specifically targeting our elementary and secondary principals. Dr. Kerwin will be joining 2 virtual sessions with our secondary principals in early April to really focus on Pillar 3 and to help them see the big picture. Career counseling is part of it, with how it connects to all of the work of Pillar 3 and choosing post-career pathways. And so we're excited for that one. And then to supplement that, we will also be doing convenings with all principals, elementary and secondary, that provides information about all of Blueprint. So the secondary one will have a focus on Pillar 3. The broader ones will really aim to connect with our principals, ensure that they have a solid understanding of what's going on, and to offer them the opportunity to provide some input and to ask some questions. Another thing on our radar is very much the career ladder work. So the first career ladder plans are due July 1 from our LEAs, and they are working hard on those. So guidance has recently been issued to help clarify and support, and we will continue to be doing that through the next few months as they negotiate a lot of these components and as each of our districts works to see what that career ladder will look like in their area. The next bullet, we mentioned about teacher prep work groups. So 2 years ago, I guess, we had started the teacher prep work group and held several convenings. We are looking to revive that here in the next couple of months and to expand the audience. We will be including representatives from our local education agencies, as well as some of our higher ed partners who are engaging in this work. We note that that does include some teacher induction work. MSD is currently working on that, and then we hope to be able to seek input and collaborate together with the higher ed and the local agencies on what that will look like in the near future. And then lastly, we wanted to share that we have received the LEA's diversity and hiring reports. We received them first in the summer of 2022, and then recently we received the follow-up update in December of 23. All of those reports are available on our website, and we have been working through those, and Deb has done a fabulous job digging in and reading and understanding the local context for each of the LEAs. We are now situated to be able to provide feedback to our LEAs on these reports that they're submitting to us. So we've really been mining them to see what's been working and what can we celebrate and what are their next steps. Where do they need support, or other ways that we can be of assistance to them as they're working on increasing diversity and recruitment of teachers. Any questions on that part?
I have one. We heard a very nice presentation in the public comment section about the center at College Park and the work they've done on developing a model for the career ladder. I just wondered if there'd been any coordination or interaction of that center with AIB staff to ensure that it's sort of consistent with the blueprint thinking about the career ladder.
Rachel, do you want that one, or do you want me to?
I can
Okay.
take a stab at that one. Thanks for that question. So yeah, the University of Maryland College Park was actually a recipient of one of the teacher collaborative grants that was provided under the blueprint. And so
Right,
they've
remember
been
that.
working under that grant that MSDE awarded for several years. And this model is sort of the outcome of that
Product of that.
work.
Good.
We have had several meetings with Dr. Eubanks and Dr. Callahan and others from University of Maryland. We've also they have been part of our career ladder convenings that we've held with school systems and state and local union representatives to share the work that they've been doing, the models that they've been developing. So we've been providing those materials and using that as one example of a model that the LEAs and the teachers unions may choose to implement.
Excellent. Thank you.
Member Lynch?
Yeah, I have two quick questions. One is you discussed quickly that a lot of the career ladders are being negotiated at this point. And I was wondering if you could just sort of take a minute to kind of like go through sort of what is in law and then what is negotiable, because I think there is some confusion about just kind of the elements that are negotiable. And then my second question is, you know, as you're working with these diversity and hiring reports, are we looking at those singularly right now, like working one-on-one with LEAs, or are we compiling that information in something that would be able to be consumed by the public, looking at sort of broad data overviews, broad best practices?
So I'll start and then I can turn it over to Rachel and Deb. In terms of the career ladders, we have been working with MSDE and also with LEAs and our union partners to develop definitions and FAQs around what is required to be included in the career ladders, and then what is essentially flexibility. All of the career ladders are subject to collective bargaining, but as part of that, anything that is specified in the law is required to be in the career ladder. And then there are many things that are not specified in the law where there's a great deal of flexibility. We've held, I think it's probably been 4 convenings now over the last year and a half, where we've shared this kind of information. We've shared FAQs and guidance. We recently put out another round of FAQs. MSDE and AIB did jointly earlier this month, that we've shared with the LEAs and the union representatives. It does at least attempt to make those clarifications for everyone who's part of the process. We do still have about, I would say, a dozen or 2 dozen outstanding questions that we are working on. And we're also actually in the process of clarifying a couple of points in the FAQ document that we released earlier this month. Presently, that document is shared with those involved in the process. So we haven't made that publicly available, but I would defer to our counsel, but I don't see why we couldn't, if that's helpful. And then on your second point, it's actually both. So I think our goal is to provide, you know, a sort of a summary and sort of a statewide kind of trend analysis of what's happening across our districts, and then also share specific best practices that we're learning from districts, and maybe those that have similar challenges that maybe haven't figured it out yet, that will help us to identify additional technical assistance, or, you know, bring districts together to discuss and do some problem solving. So that's, we're really aiming for both, and on a number of topics, and this would be one of the first.
And I would add to that that for the state level look, we have the reports from the Maryland Longitudinal Data Service on this, that we are able to get the big picture. And then we have the LEA reports to help us drill down. And then this is actually going to be a really great connection to our introduction of our committee members, to share a little bit more when they pulled together people from across the state to talk about some of these initiatives and this report directly. So I think you're about to get a good bit more information on that. Deb, was there anything you wanted to add to that?
No, I think that you and Rachel said it all. But yeah, thank you, Member Lynch, for the question.
Perfect. And then on our next slide, we are transitioning this over to our advisory committee members. So Member Lynch did Member Robinson did a fabulous job talking about the work of this group, and they have really had some exciting meetings lately that have generated a lot of conversation around our Grow Your Own programs across the state and the efforts underway with diversity and hiring. So with that, I'd like to introduce John Selke, Christy Baldwin Murphy, and Brian King.
Thank you so much, Rachel, for that introduction. I'm going to have Christy sort of share a little bit of the work that our committee had done during the first year, and then we'll transition to Brian talking a little bit about work with diversity and looking at that, and then I will finish it up with some of the work that we looked at with Grow Your Own. And then the three of us would definitely be open to questions from the board. So Christy, take it away.
Thank you, John. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having us. I'm Christy Murphy Baldwin, Chief of Human Resources for Prince George's County Public Schools, and I get the honor of serving with John as the co-chair or vice chair of Pillar 2. So for the last 2 years, it's been a whirlwind because I think we have probably one of the best pillars, if I have to say so myself, and the one that everyone is most engaged in. And so our first year, we really spent a lot of work just unpacking the career ladder and then what would be some different ways in which we could provide some guidance as an advisory committee to our fellow colleagues, as well as to the AIB on what we're hearing. So our first year was really spent on engaging in that career ladder conversation. And as Rachel said, specifically with the University of Maryland, because John and I have the awesome pleasure of serving in Prince George's and Montgomery County, and that's where a lot of the state framework started with our work. The second year, however, we realized that we needed to focus a little bit more on have an equal distribution of all of the objectives under Pillar 2 to also help our state colleagues who are working through this to understand that the blueprint Pillar 2 is not just the career ladder, it's only one component. And we need to help get that narrative out that there are more than just that one objective. So we actually outlined a plan for each of the areas. And then one of our wonderful colleagues, Brian, who's in Charles County, has done an amazing job of working with us to bring in various stakeholders so we can kind of help the AIB ease some of that anxiety and help everyone understand that everything is not, Pillar 2 is not just the career ladder, but it's a combination of multiple objectives to bring in highly qualified, diverse teachers. So we thank you for this opportunity, and I'm going to turn it over to Brian to see if he has anything else to add on to it.
Great. Thank you, Christy. Good afternoon, everybody. As you said, I'm Brian King. I'm a principal at an elementary school in Charles County. What I'd like to just briefly share with the board, we had a meeting back in January where we invited 3 different LEAs to share some of their ongoing work in terms of diversity goals around hiring. And a thanks to Wycomico, Calvert, and Washington County, who all presented to our committee. And what we heard from the counties, folks talked about their Grow Your Own programs, their TAM programs. The folks in Calvert also spoke about partnering with West Ed, where West Ed came in and did an audit of their entire hiring process from candidate outreach to candidate onboarding. And that partnership and that audit led to some action goals and some changes in strategy in Calvert County. And in Washington County, we heard an update from their strategic facilitator about how they're going about setting growth targets, looking at gaps between staff and student demographics, and how they're looking to address those. So once the LEAs informed our committee discussion, we spent the second half of the meeting really kind of processing what we had heard from those LEAs. And the real theme that I think is worthwhile to share with the AIB is that there's a supply side concern here, right? When it comes to folks working in our schools. And that's not a headline. But what our committee came to process is that making the profession more accessible to a broader range of folks can speak to that supply side. And really, when you think about accessibility, we spoke about it. There's two entry points to public education. The first is when you pursue a degree towards working in public schools. The second entry point is actually coming into the schoolhouse and working with children. And we focused on that first entry point of pursuing a degree. And we thought that anything that can minimize barriers or challenges in terms of the awareness of the profession and engaging with those people that might be interested in joining our profession would be worthwhile efforts. I know that even AIB member Robinson spoke about accessibility, and often it comes from, past family members that may have worked in the school system, and just a general mindset of service. We focus a lot on the $60,000 salary, and it's worth mentioning. But I think we also have to be very cognizant of speaking from a service mindset. Public education is a service profession. And so making sure that we're not missing out on recruiting folks by over highlighting salary and maybe not emphasizing the service side of our profession as much. And I think you think about adjustments to the Maryland Teaching Fellows Scholarship. Initially, it was a 3.3 GPA and top 15% of your class. Those have been looked at and adjusted, and I think those are encouraging signals that we're taking down barriers and increasing accessibility. So that really was a debrief of that meeting. I'll pass it over to John.
Thanks so much, Brian. So our next meeting, we built upon really examining more of the grow your own models from different districts. We again reached out, and one of the themes of our year 2 is that while we have 5 or 6 strong members on our committee, we recognize that 2 of them are from Prince George's, 1 of them is from Montgomery. We have 1 from Carroll, amongst others. So it's a limited representation. And so one of our goals is to make sure that we are hearing from as many LEAs as possible. And so with the Grow Your Own Model meeting, we reached out to Frederick County, Montgomery County, Hartford County, St. Mary's, and Baltimore County all came and shared. And we also had a representation from Educators Rising. So the Libby Wycoop at Towson University, who is the Educators Rising, I guess, connection to the state of Maryland, the liaison with the state of Maryland. A few things that came out from that meeting, and piggybacking off of what Brian talked about, are there are definitely some small concerted efforts in districts starting and looking at the high schoolers, seeing teaching as a valuable profession and exposing them to teaching at the high school level, with the goal of having these students attend a Maryland college, complete their teaching degree, and then in an ideal situation, go back and teach where they came from. They talked about how these efforts are producing some future teachers, but certainly not at huge numbers that we potentially would like to see or would want to see. Want to add something that Brian talked about, or from the other meeting that one of our members, Patricia, has talked about, is the need that it's not only salary, but thinking about, wraparound supports and others, including things such as housing. The fact that teachers need to afford to live in the places where they're wanting to teach. And so that when we are thinking of recruiting and retaining high quality teachers, we need to think broadly about not only state initiatives, but maybe local initiatives that can support teachers pursuing those careers. The other aspect from the Grow Your Own is that we are not just looking at students, high school students or others who would be pursuing a teaching career, but we are looking at paraprofessionals. We are looking at those that are already in the building and considering ways that they could move into a teaching certification. And as Rachel talked about a little bit in the numbers, we have districts thinking about how can we help and support and move teachers who are on conditional certifications to non-conditional or, complete certifications. So those are some of the things that Pillar 2 has started to address. We are really looking at a broad range. The other piece that I just want to add, really grateful that Brian's here. One of the goals that Christy and I made in year 2 is that we see our pillar as true collaborative leadership. It is not just myself and Christy, a chair and vice chair, but we wanted everybody to participate. And so we were really grateful when Brian stepped in and said, I'm going to take the lead on analyzing the diversity reports with the help of Rachel A. being able to make contacts with different districts. And she similarly provided great contacts for our Grow Your Own. Some of the topics we plan on looking at down the line are looking at certification versus licensure, talking about the different requirements for teachers to become certified, and potentially some of the barriers that some of those requirements may put in place to building our teaching profession. So thank you so much for hearing a little bit about what's happening in Pillar 2. We are definitely open to any questions or comments or thoughts from the rest of the committee.
Thank you. The question reference to the comment you made earlier, reference to the numbers, and I'm not sure it was the Grow Your Own program, and you said not seeing the numbers or that what you'd like. Could you expand on that a little bit more?
Sure. In most of the districts that we heard of, so for example, Montgomery County, they talked about, with their Grow Their Own program, I think they have maybe 30 potential teachers that are in their particular program that would be potentially pursuing teacher education. And so those are the similar types of numbers that we're seeing from our multiple partners. And so it's certainly significant, but it's not necessarily I think as large as we may hope, that we could have more people even applying for the teacher scholarships, even pursuing teaching in the state of Maryland. So that's where we talked about that the numbers aren't quite at the level as I think that we may like them to be. They're where they are, and we're seeing growth, but we certainly are hopeful for more growth in the near future.
That may be offset also by retention efforts. So have you looked at that to see what we're doing, not only just growing your own, but maintaining what you have?
So we haven't dug into the retention, but I think that would definitely be a great topic to explore in the near future. A lot of Pillar 2 talks about increasing the number of high quality and diverse teachers, so increasing the total number, but retention is definitely a part of that. And we will definitely add it to our radar as a topic in the near future.
Yeah, please do, because if our efforts, even if they are successful in growing our own and other initiatives to increase the number of teachers coming in the front door, if we're losing similar numbers going out the back door, then we have not made progress in this. So that becomes a essential. Thank you.
Great point. Thank you.
Any additional question, Rachel A?
I had just a real quick comment. I want to thank you all for the work you're doing. I mean, the implementation of the blueprint is such a complicated, difficult matter, and your presence and the presence of the advisory boards makes a huge difference. You're both a sounding board to hear about issues and a voice by coming to the AIB to offer advice and guidance as we move forward. So your dedication and work as an advisory board is just deeply, deeply appreciated.
Thank you so much.
I do not see any other hands or questions. So thank you so much. This was excellent. As each pillar, as we keep moving through each pillar, I think they're just going to keep getting better and better. So thank you.
Thanks again.
Thanks, everyone.
There are no further comments. I think we're ready for the executive director report.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so the first item is the LEA Blueprint Implementation Plans. So on Friday, March 15th, the first part of the 2024 LEA plans were due to AIB and MSDE. We received all 24 of those, and they are posted on the AIB's website, and the link is actually in the agenda. But they are you can get to them both from the homepage and also from the implementation plan page. Just as a reminder, this part one is really a question around, it's just one, well, it's one question, but sort of a series of prompts around, what the LEAs are focusing on in terms of their top priorities for blueprint implementation, their biggest challenges with blueprint implementation, and how they're really thinking systemically and about how they're thinking what they're doing and how they're doing things, and trying to transform their systems really to implement the blueprint. The AIB and MSDE will be reviewing these plans over the next several weeks, and we will be providing joint feedback to the LEAs once we have all reviewed their plans. And so this will not be a two-part process this year. It will be a one-part process. We will provide joint feedback to the LEAs. And I just say we're looking forward to, we've already, of course, taken a quick look at them, and we're looking forward to digging in and sharing both with them and with you all, what they're thinking and really what their needs are in terms of additional technical assistance and guidance. And so that is, of course, sort of the kickoff to our 2024 Blueprint Implementation Plan process. The next part two of the LEA plans is due on May 1st, and they have 23 questions that they've been asked to respond to in their submission on May 1st. And as a reminder, that is in comparison to 164 last year in the initial plan. So we have streamlined the plan significantly, and we have been holding office hours weekly, AIB and MSDE staff, with the blueprint coordinators and their strategic facilitators when they would like to include them, to respond to questions and provide guidance and additional information and supports as they are working through developing their 2024 implementation plans. We are going to continue doing that, all the way up to, the week before the plans are due. We did give LEAs an opportunity to submit a draft of their part one response if they wanted to, that we would provide some feedback on. A couple of LEAs took advantage of that, and we're also giving them that same opportunity for their part 2 submissions. And I can't remember the date that we gave them. I'll ask Emma Pellerin if she can just help me out there. I think we gave them a date later coming up soon to provide a draft of their responses if they wanted us to take a look and give any feedback prior to the May 1 submission.
April 8th.
April 8th, thank you. Many dates, many deadlines coming up. Thank you. That I think that is all I have on the blueprint implementation plans at the moment. Emma, what did I miss anything? And does anyone have any questions on this topic?
I think you captured everything.
Thank you.
Just such good news that this is being done in partnership with MSDE. So thumbs up on that. And I think the process will go much smoother this year.
Yes, thank you. Yes, we have been spending a lot of quality time with our partners at MSDE, and we're all feeling like this process is going to hopefully go smoothly. I'm actually going to hold on the staffing update until a little bit later. So related to the blueprint implementation plans is, of course, our technical assistance grants. We have our phase 1 grants that are supporting strategic facilitators who are working with 22 of our 24 LEAs and the CTE committee. And the primary work that those strategic facilitators have been doing is helping the LEAs think, more strategically, more innovatively around how they're going to implement the blueprint and sort of how to rethink what they're doing to support the development of the 2024 plans that they're now submitting, as well as to support them in some deeper thinking around specific pieces of the blueprint, such as the career ladder that we've been talking about. Pre-K expansion is another topic that many of them have been working on, and also the CCR pathways and thinking about what that looks like and the supports that are provided to students who are not yet college and career ready. So our strategic facilitators have been, really digging in, and everything that we've heard has been almost unanimously positive about their value and fee and impact on the work. And so, as you know, I think at the last board meeting, we talked about phase 2 of our technical assistance grants, and that part of those grants would be to continue the work of strategic facilitators with their LEAs for those that would like to continue their work. Both the LEA and the strategic facilitator need to agree on that. And also that AIB will, be making a recommendation around, whether, the impact, the value add of that partnership, whether we would want to continue funding it for next year. In addition, we are providing targeted technical assistance on specific topics. The number one priority for that targeted technical assistance is resource allocation and strategic budgeting, which, we're hearing from pretty much all of our school systems that this is a challenge. So what we have released the grant application for the phase 2 technical assistance grants. Those are on the AIB's website. Again, you can get to them on the homepage, and you can also get to them on the About AIB page under grant opportunities. And for phase 2, we have a deadline of April 1st for what we are calling strategic partners. So these are not different from strategic facilitators, who are individual coaches that are working directly with the LEAs. The strategic partners are not necessarily one person. It can be an organization or an entity that has, through one or more staff members, expertise in particular subjects and topics. The first one being budgeting, strategic budgeting and planning, and analysis of revenues and spending. And so for our strategic budgeting and resource allocation targeted topic. So those applications from anyone who's interested in being considered to be what we're calling a strategic partner are due to AIB on April 1st. The LEAs have a little more time to determine whether they want to, what they would like to participate in for the next year. And so once those applications come in April 1st, AIB will be reviewing them and interviewing entities and identifying the strategic partners that will then be available to work with LEAs. And for the phase 2 targeted assistance, we're envisioning, whereas in phase 1, it was an individual strategic facilitator working with an LEA, and we do have some strategic facilitators working with more than one LEA, but there is that very one-on-one working relationship. For the targeted technical assistance, and it will depend on which how many LEAs want to participate in the different types of targeted technical assistance, but we're envisioning that there may be groups of LEAs that will work with a strategic partner. And there would be a combination of group work as well as individual work with those LEAs by that strategic partner. As a reminder, we are encouraging county governments to partner with their LEAs on the work around strategic budgeting and resource allocation. And LEAs that do partner with their counties in that work, in the application, will be given the highest priority for funding under phase 2. So those applications are due May 15th. So more time. The strategic partners need to have applications in on April 1st. We held an information session on earlier this week. The days have blurred together for me. And all of that information, the slide deck, and a set of FAQs that we've received questions and we've got responses to are all posted on our website. There is another information session on Monday, and you can sign up on the website if you are interested in participating in that session. And through the registration, you can also add questions that you have about the grants or the process. Member Lynch.
I just have one quick question. At this point, it seems like we are LEAs are self-selecting that they would be participating in technical assistance grant applications. Is there now or a time in the future in which, based upon outcome results, based upon sort of what, another evaluative process, where the AIB would either be inviting our LEAs to participate in particular areas or requiring LEAs to be participating in particular technical assistance in order to best support them?
That's a great question. I think that's definitely something that we can consider, and that really would be up to you all. I could see, and again, our council Dutterer will chime in here, but I could see that there could be the possibility of, strongly encouraging an LEA to participate in certain technical assistance, or possibly even making it a condition of plan approval. I would want our council to opine on that, and she doesn't have to do it on the spot here unless she would like to. But right now, you're right. As you described it, we are, it is about giving the LEAs the opportunity to identify what they would like technical assistance and support with. Ms. Denner, did you want to say anything?
No, I can certainly, we can discuss that or do some research, but I think it's something to take a look at.
Yeah.
And then can I ask a follow-up question budget wise?
Yes.
Madam Executive Director, just thinking about the importance of these technical assistance grants. I think we're still now at this learning phase. So I think, people are still building those capacities. I think there is going to be a space in the future where this becomes really important as a continued support to help those come into compliance, come into alignment with the blueprint, accelerate and advance what they're doing in their school systems. And so is there a mechanism by which this funding will continue? Is this something that we should be, thinking about for future budget cycles?
Excellent question. So as the mandate for technical assistance grants was in the law was provided $3 million in fiscal 22 through fiscal 24. I won't get into the details, but AIB did not have access to all of those funds, has not had access to all of those funds. But we do have $1.9 million in our fiscal 24 budget that we have reserved to be able to provide technical assistance grants for phase 2. And in addition, both the House and the Senate, the budget is still moving through the process. But the Senate, which adopted the budget first, and now the House, which adopted the budget today, have both included additional funds for technical assistance for AIB. So that brings us up to $3 million that we would have available for fiscal 25 for phase 2. We need to, it needs to pass. So anything can happen between now and April 8th, but obviously they both included that funding in their budget proposals and recognized that the importance of AIB having the $3 million for technical assistance grants. It is still possible that the mandate could be continued. That would require a legislative change and so it's possible that will happen this session. Otherwise, it would be, subject to the annual budget process.
Thanks.
Any other questions about technical assistance grants?
Well, it is very encouraging that so many LEAs have welcomed these consultants. I think it's a very encouraging sign. And I think anecdotally, you feel they're pleased with the consultants.
Yes. Overwhelmingly, they are pleased with their strategic facilitators and want to continue working with them.
Good.
Yes. Okay. The next item is an update on the literacy expert teams. So as you know, the Mile Center is managing the literacy teams and the literacy reviews for AIB and MSDE, and they currently have reviewed all of the pre-K through 5 early literacy plans that the school system submitted in draft form, and are in the process of meeting with each of them to share their feedback. and suggestions and additional information and resources to support what the rubric that they've developed that would provide for a comprehensive literacy plan. So those meetings are happening now. And the school visits are also underway into the elementary schools across the 24 school systems to observe literacy instruction and instructional coaching in the classrooms. And so all of that is underway. I think that we're working to address some concerns that some LEAs have expressed around the timeline for when different plans are due. They have an opportunity to resubmit their pre-K 5 literacy plan to Mile so that they can get additional feedback before it is required to be submitted to MSDE and AIB on June 28th. So they're going to have an opportunity to submit a revised plan and get additional feedback on that. And then they also are going to have the opportunity to submit a draft 6 through 12 plan. So right in January, they were required to submit a draft pre-K to 5 literacy plan. By June 28th, they have to submit a pre-K through 12 plan. And so they're also going to have the opportunity to submit to MSDE a grade 6 through 12 plan to get feedback before the final version is due in July. So what we've talking with MSDE, we're trying to give them opportunities to receive additional support and feedback, but at the same time not add to already a very full list of deadlines and things that have to be submitted. So we're working our way through that. But I think the message that AIB and MSD have been sharing is that all of this work around what Mile is providing, the reviews of their plans and the school visits is all intended to support and help the LEAs deliver, high quality literacy instruction for students and so that we can improve student outcomes. That's all about supporting them and making sure that we're, we have a comprehensive approach that is going to increase student outcomes. And it is not about, creating penalties or, gotcha kind of moments or anything like that. So we're really working to, build those relationships across the LEAs. Any questions about literacy?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
For the folks who are listening or watching, could you just explain what MAL is and why we have chosen or why MSDA has chosen to work with them?
Sure. Yes. Thank you. And Miles is a joint center between the University of Maryland College Park and Morgan State University that is focused on literacy and equity in education. So it's the Maryland Institute for Literacy and Equity. They are the only sort of center in higher education in Maryland that is in public education that is, has that very singular focus on literacy and equity. And so when the AIB and the state board proposed this initiative, it was sort of a natural partnership to work with Mile to do this work, particularly they already had some experts on their staff. They were already working in several LEAs to support this work. And so it was just a natural partnership that also allowed, because of the timing of this initiative, of course, just the decision being made in late fall, it was really imperative to work with somebody who could hit the ground running pretty quickly in order to be able to do this work during the rest of the school year. And it is challenging, even so, particularly with the school schedules for these literacy visits. We're working as hard as we can to get as many visits in as possible, but working around spring break and testing testing times in schools is requiring some creative logistical scheduling, but we're working, the team with Mile and MSDE are working hard to sort of try to alleviate some of the concerns around that. Did someone else have, Joe, Mr. Manka?
Just a comment and then a question. So the comment overall is, I think upon reflection, just how fortunate we were to have partnered with Mile on this initiative, because I think it would have been very, very hard to hit the ground running and deploy things so expeditiously without their support. And then also in conversations with them, I was really impressed by their orientation around support and really emphasizing the support of schools and, downplaying the kind of evaluative accountability component of it. Because I think, this is an area where we are really, there's a lot of changes across the state around how we're approaching literacy and, really working hand in hand to try to collaboratively get to a better place, I think that has been a very prudent approach. And I appreciate that orientation from the team at Mile. My question is just around, and I know this is hard to ask because we're like barely getting started on round one, but I think we soon enough will be in planning stages for what these reviews look like for next year. And hopefully, with enough runway, we'll be able to do this in a way we're not having to hustle to schedule them, in a way that adversely impacts schools due to testing and spring break and things like that. So have we started to think about some of these reviews for next year? Are we going to continue to partner with Mile? Are we going to be looking at some point, are we going to pivot and start looking at more closely at math instruction? What are you thinking about as we kind of, even though we're in the midst of like just the starting points of implementation now, what does this look like in the long term in subsequent years?
Well, Joe, remember Manko,
yes,
minute the answer to the question you just raised, a question that we're going to have to answer ourselves. I think that ideally, we would like to get as much as we can this year, but I think given the lateness of it, we will creep into next year as well. But the second part of this was to pivot into the math concerns of the second year. But how we do that and adjustment of that is something I think once we get the information back, see what progress we've made, I think at that point in time, we'll be in a better position to determine how we want to pivot and what else we want to do. But a lot of it depends on the work that we're doing now and how satisfied we are with it. But right in terms of Miles, we're really satisfied that we're able to get off the ground and running with them. And we'll just have to see how we answer that question as we go forward. But that's a question you're going to have answer for us.
If I could just add, at the staff level, at least, we definitely are thinking about what that could look like for next year so that we have, as you put it, more runway to plan. And so we are thinking about that, talking with MSDE about that, and in the early stages of thinking through a proposal to bring back to both boards about what that could look like for next year.
Great, thank you.
Okay, I don't see any other questions on this topic. The next item is an update on plan metrics alignment. And we wanted to come back to this as this was one of the items that we discussed at our joint board meeting with the state board last month. And there have been a couple of staff meetings at the staff level since then to start working through this process. And I wanted to ask Emma Pellerin, our plan director, if she could give an update on that work.
Yeah, absolutely. Like Rachel said, I'm sorry, Executive Director Heiss said, we have had meetings between MSD and AIB staff, a couple of meetings to look back at the measures that are aligned between the MSDE, AIB, and Governor Moore's state plan to identify a combined measure that we can use moving forward. I know that was discussed at the joint board meeting in February, how it would be helpful to have a combined measure for all of these measures that are aligned. So we've been working on combining those measures and have draft combined measures resulting from the last two meetings between MSD and AIB staff across all of the aligned measures that were presented in the February meeting. And we are meeting on a weekly basis now to continue the process of refining those measures if needed, but also to actually set targets. We're discussing the target setting process and approach, knowing that we have discussed potential approaches in previous meetings and are continuing those discussions now. And we're looking forward to presenting targets later on this spring to the State Board of Education and to the AIB.
Thank you, Emma.
Absolutely.
So I think we're working toward bringing these proposals back to the outcome measures work group that AIB has, as well as the state board has a subcommittee that would be looking at this work, and so that we can bring a proposal to both boards, ideally at a joint meeting, potentially in June, for approval, and that would include targets for those metrics. There any questions on that? Mr. Manco.
This may be getting a little too in the weeds, but our aspiration is, when we're talking about targets, are we talking about state level targets, or are we thinking about doing something more granular and doing targets at the LEA level, or is that still an unsettled terrain?
That's an excellent question. We were, in fact, just talking about that earlier this week. So I think it's possible it may depend by metric. And I think we need to work through the process around, I think ultimately we know that we want to have targets for LEAs as well as the state. And so thinking about how LEA targets might roll up into a state target, or how a state target might, roll down to LEA targets, is, part of what we're thinking through. And so it's an excellent question. It's not, there's not an easy answer, but it is definitely, we're working on it.
Great, thanks so much.
Any other questions?
Okay, the next item is outreach materials, and this is really just, I wanted to make sure everyone watching and listening to our meetings was aware that we have posted a number of materials, outreach materials on our website under the resources tab that is available to anyone to download. And there's several different slide decks that are focused on overall blueprint 101 sort of information, and then materials that are more specifically designed for sort of parents and community members, and then also educators. And so we just wanted to make sure that that folks were aware that those materials are there and available, and we're going to continue to provide more of those kinds of materials as we move forward. If there's something, I mean, I'm sure I might regret saying this, but if there's something that you're looking for, or that you'd like to see available that we haven't posted yet, please let us know, and we will continue to work with our communications consultant to address those requests and needs. And I'm going to use that as a segue to the staffing update. We are hoping to be able to hire a communications and outreach director soon. We've run into a bit of a snag on that, but we're going to resolve that and move forward on that. I also wanted to announce, and we'll be getting all these materials posted on our website very quickly, that the research and data analyst position has been posted, and we encourage anyone who has any interest in research and data, fiscal budget numbers, any of those areas we're looking for some skilled analysts who can work with us, and that position is open right now until April 9th, and it'll be available on the website again under About AIB, and join our team. All the salary information and the position description and the qualifications are all posted there. So we encourage folks to apply, and also to share the notice with anyone who they think might be interested in joining the AIB team. Mr. Manco.
They just to review again, where on the website are the outreach materials available?
If you go to the resources tab, and then let me do it with you here. And then gotta move my box here. Okay, resources tab, and then under resources for at the bottom, and that says families, administrators, and teachers.
Perfect. Okay. Thanks.
Absolutely. And then we will be just to finish on staffing, we will be reposting the position, the two policy analyst positions that we were not able to fill in the fall for Pillar 1 and the part of Pillar 3 around CCR and including CTE pathways. So we're going to be reposting for those positions also. Those will be the next things posted later in April. And then we have the research and accountability director position that we're also going to be posting end of April, early May, I would say. So we're working to fill all of our positions as quickly as we can. I think with that, we can move to the legislative update. And I just wanted to, as you know, we're tracking, there's a lot of bills this year that have some relation to the blueprint There are many that don't really affect the blueprint as well. But we're tracking all of them, but we do have, a handful of bills that we've been very focused on this session that I just wanted to give an update on. And the first is, of course, what is being called the Blueprint Departmental Bill, which includes the recommendations that the AIB made for changes to the blueprint law and that MSDE has supported. And that those are Senate Bill 1102 and House Bill 1426. Both the House and the Senate have each passed their version of the bill with in slightly different postures. As a reminder, AIB did propose 2 amendments with MSDE to the bill, one of which addresses some of the concerns that we have been hearing and that we were aware of regarding the college and career readiness standard and the implementation of the new standard as we transition from the interim standard to the new standard. And that part of that challenge, and we talked about this at the joint board meeting, is the timing of the shift from the interim standard to the new standard and the funding that is provided through the blueprint. And so essentially, the issue is that the number of students that meet the new CCR standard in high schools is about 20 percentage points greater than the number that met the interim standard. So from about 40% of students to 60% of students. And as a result, that means that more students would be eligible to participate in college and career pathways in the fall of 2024. However, the funding that the LEAs are receiving for college and career ready pathways for students who are college and career ready in 11th and 12th grade is based on the interim standard, which is a smaller number of students, and it fiscal 25, the year that we're talking about, the next year's budget. In addition, data was available to move from a proxy, which is what MSDE had been using for the formula, to actual results from the spring 2023 MCAP results, which actually had fewer than that 40% of students being college and career ready. And so the school systems are in a challenging position as a result of this sort of perfect storm, which is not perfect, in that they're actually receiving less funding for college and career ready pathways in fiscal 25, while at the same time, more high school students are actually meeting the CCR standard. And under the blueprint law, students that meet the CCR standard have the ability to enroll in what we call post-CCR pathways at no cost to the student or their families. So the amendment that AIB and MSDE proposed that was adopted in slightly different forms in each house was to give the AIB and the State Board of Education the authority to essentially set a minimum number of dual enrollment courses that all CCR students would be able to take. That would not necessarily be an unlimited number, which is under the blueprint law currently, is essentially the intent, at least, of the blueprint was to give students the possibility, the opportunity of earning an associate's degree while they're still in high school. And so that's 60 credits while they're in
Executive
high school.
Yes. The number they could take without payment, they could take more courses They just simply won't get reimbursed for that, correct?
Correct. So what we're talking about is setting a minimum number that all LEAs would offer to students at no cost.
Right.
Exactly. There
Right.
would still be the ability for students to or their families to pay for additional dual enrollment courses. And
Right.
really the intent of this is to actually ensure that more students have the ability to dual enroll in some dual enrollment courses, because rather than potentially a smaller number of students enrolling in many courses, this would allow more students to at least have the opportunity to participate in dual enrollment as we transition from the interim standard to the new standard. So that is the purpose of that amendment. Of course, dual enrollment is very popular with students and with families, and it's a excellent sign of the value of the blueprint and what the blueprint is proposing and supporting. And we just need to kind of get through this transition period as we move to the new CCR standard that, as a reminder, has the multiple measures, that includes a multiple measure of a 3.0 GPA and a C in Algebra 1. And so it's those multiple measures that are expanding the number of students that meet the CCR standard. And we want to make sure that as many students as possible have that opportunity to dual enroll while they are in high school. And so the Senate and the House will need to resolve the differences in the language. The Senate language really, as a result of some of what I'm explaining here, because there was some confusion about what the intent was, wanted to make it clear in the language that that the intent is to maximize dual enrollment opportunities for students, and that this limit of dual enrollment courses would only be for a 3-year period. So the Senate amendment has more detail than the House currently. And the other reason that we propose this is because we wanted to make sure that the school systems actually have the ability to limit the number of dual enrollment courses that students can take, because under the law, they don't have that authority presently. And so, and they really are in a budgetary squeeze in this coming year and potentially next year as well. The other amendment that MSD and AIB proposed was around the kindergarten readiness assessment. As you know, the state superintendent and the state board made the determination to procure a new KRA as a result of the study that was done in response to the AIB's requirement around because the blueprint requires the state to give an unbiased KRA, and a study came back that showed that the KRA does have bias, our current KRA, particularly linguistic and cultural bias. And so as a result, there are some deadlines in the statute around when the KRA has to be completed and when the results have to be provided. And it is possible that districts won't be able to meet those deadlines because of the timing of when a new KRA can be procured, and then when it's available for them to start to administer it in the schools. So that was the other amendment that AIB and MSDE proposed. The House version has some additional amendments related to some technical changes. Also, they did on the House side, we had recommended that the early childhood teachers be eligible for the loan assistance repayment program. That provision was struck in the House bill, as they are concerned about adding too many fields to the loan assistance repayment program eligibility. And they also struck the provisions related to pre-K expansion grant fund and the high quality staffing requirements. That was really, I think, done because they put similar provisions in a different bill. And they took it out of House Bill 1426. So there are things that definitely need to be resolved in the next 2.5 weeks before sine die on this bill. But overall, there's tremendous support for the proposals that we made and the additional proposals that we made to the blueprint. The other handful of bills I wanted to talk about briefly, Senate Bill 771 and House Bill 945, which relate to initial teacher certification. The AIB and MSDE worked to develop joint proposal for amendments to that bill. And we also, in discussions with MSEA as well. And the result of those discussions are in both versions of the bill that has passed each house. And it really does speak to many of the issues that came up in the Pillar 2 conversation, particularly around conditional teachers. And what the bill with the amendments does is it really does create a multiple measures for teachers who do not go through sort of the traditional teacher preparation approach and who are in our classrooms now and are working to meet the requirements. And under the amendments, it will allow conditional teachers to be considered on the path to certification, I will call it, if they have at least a 3.0 in their degree program. So it's not only that they have to, there's more than one path to meeting the what is referred to as the basic literacy skills requirement of our licensure currently. And they also have the opportunity to meet the requirement for the teacher portfolio assessment that is part of the blueprint law through an induction program. So rather than just completing the portfolio assessment, which if you were going through a traditional teacher preparation program would essentially be part of your program. They can participate in an induction program while they're teaching in the classroom. That would include a portfolio assessment that is locally developed but approved by MSDE. So the bill expands these pathways to allow really more teachers to have the opportunity to meet the high quality requirements that the blueprint calls for, and have well qualified teachers in our classroom. So I think it goes a long way to addressing some of the challenges that we're hearing around meeting the certification requirements, and particularly the requirements were developed, pre-COVID. And so we're in a different environment than when some of these blueprint provisions were adopted. I think when the commission was meeting, there were less than 1,000 conditional teachers statewide. And now we have over 5,000. So it's just not the same scenario as when the blueprint was being developed. And so I think as we're recognizing that and we're adapting where we can while still maintaining the intent of the blueprint.
Yeah.
The third bill relates is Senate Bill 161 and House Bill 200. These bills relate to the community schools program, and we are actually AIB and the MSDE and Strong Schools Maryland are currently and the MOST Network have been working to develop joint proposal for amendments to the bills that we think that in both bills the sponsors and the committees did some great work in thinking through how do we better plan and help community schools plan for the work that they're doing and support that work. And so we are going to be proposing some additional amendments to each bill that we think would streamline the process that they've set up around community schools in terms of the sequencing of a needs assessment, an implementation plan, implementation period, and then an evaluation, a new report that would be essentially kind of an evaluation of the impact of the funding and the wraparound services and supports being provided to students and communities. That would be a new report that AIB and MSDE would be responsible for reviewing and reporting back to the Governor and General Assembly on the findings. And so we're going to be proposing just sort of a streamlining of that. And I think it's been an excellent opportunity to sort of collaborate with our partners again, as we are really trying to refine the blueprint and make sure that it is meeting the intent and the vision of the blueprint. The last bill I wanted to talk about is House Bill 1441. This bill did not have a cross file, and it relates to early childhood educators. And similar to Senate Bill 771, House Bill 945, which provide multiple measures for teacher licensure, House Bill 1441 is as amended in the House, does provide for essentially multiple pathways for early childhood teachers, pre-K teachers, to meet the high quality requirements of the blueprint for private providers. MSD and AIB worked with the sponsor of House Bill 1441, Delegate Atterbury, to really try to address the concerns and the challenges that particularly private providers are facing in their staffing of their pre-K classrooms to help support the expansion of pre-kinder, full day pre-K. So we did come together and work on shared amendments, most of which are reflected in the bill that was passed. And it is now over in the Senate. And so next week, so Monday was crossover. So on Monday was the date by which any bill that was going to pass to the other house and not go to the Rules Committee, which if a bill goes to the Rules Committee, it may or may not come out. If you pass the bill by crossover, a bill does not go to the Rules Committee, so it goes straight to the committee for consideration. So that was Monday, and so many hundreds of bills crossed over on Monday, and now the legislature will be starting to work on those bills that crossed over And there are a number of hearings set for next Tuesday and Wednesday in both the House and the Senate on these bills, as well as other bills. And then, of course, they will need to complete their work by April 8th at midnight.
Okay.
Real quick question, if I could.
Yes.
Sure.
What is the Delegate Atterbury's bill scheduled for a hearing?
It is. It is scheduled for Wednesday, March 27th
Uh-huh. And
in the Senate.
are we expected to testify on it or not?
They are sponsor-only hearings.
Uh-huh.
But we will be sharing written testimony
Uh-huh.
with the committees.
Okay.
And I kind of already gave the budget update in response to Member Lynch's question regarding technical assistance. But just generally, I will say we're very, grateful for both the House and the Senate for adopting the AIB's budget and the governor's allowance as submitted for fiscal 25, and also the addition of the technical assistance grant funds for fiscal 25, so that we do have $3 million available to support the phase 2 grants, as well as providing funding to support office space for the AIB, which, as you know, we do not currently have the funding for that in our budget. And on the House side, they also actually added funds for a government relations position, for an additional position for the AIB. So we will see where that all ends up by the last day of session. But for now, things are definitely positive. There are also many other bills that in the House in particular took some actions that provide additional funding for the Blueprint Fund. But many of those proposals are not in the Senate provisions now. So again, we will see where things end up. But regardless, there's clearly a commitment to the blueprint in the legislature. Yeah. If there is nothing else, we could move to the last item.
Right. Okay.
Right. So in January, we discussed the minimum school funding requirement, and we shared some draft guidance around how the AIB is approaching the statutory requirements and the compliance, school system compliance with this requirement. You do have a revised version of the guidance that we wanted to bring back to you for adoption. When we proposed the draft guidance, we shared it, and we wanted to give superintendents and school systems and others the opportunity to review the guidance and give us feedback. For the most part, the feedback was really to include more specific statutory citations in the language and make it much more specific. And so we have done that. That is pretty much what the changes are to this version versus the draft that we provided in January. And just to kind of briefly summarize this, as a reminder for everyone, under the blueprint, the law requires school systems to begin reporting on their compliance with what is called the minimum school funding requirement, or it's also referred to as Section 5 234, which is the statutory citation in the education article. Beginning July 1st, they will be reporting on their compliance with this requirement. And what the requirement is, and it is new. This is not something that school systems have been asked to report on before or to comply with before, is that for each of the primary funding formulas in the blueprint, the foundation being the largest, the foundation program is over $3.5 billion, and it provides the funding for every student to support the education of every student. And then we have targeted formulas that are designed to support the needs of different students, and that includes multilingual learners, students with disabilities, students from low-income households as a proxy for students who might need additional supports and resources. There is also the full-day pre-K funding, the concentration of poverty grant funding, and several other smaller programs. And for all of these programs, 75% of the per pupil amount under the law is required to follow the student to the school they're attending. There are two programs, the concentration of poverty per pupil grant and the pre-K funding for private providers, where 100% of the per pupil funding has to follow students to their schools. For all the other formulas, it's 75%. And really the intent of this provision was to, because the funding is being provided based on enrollment counts of very, specific students, and but LEAs traditionally have had, tremendous flexibility in allocating those funds, based on their own decisions. What the minimum school funding requirement is saying is, a portion of those monies, 75%, needs to be demonstrated that it's going to support students, that student, meaning this at that school. And so there's a new financial reporting system that MSDE has developed in consultation with the AIB. This was part of the blueprint because obviously to do this kind of new reporting required a financial reporting system to accommodate school level reporting. And that system has been in development for over a year, and it has been in sort of what we call the beta testing mode for the past several months. And beginning April 1st, every LEA is going to have access to the system. They have been uploading data into the system, all 24 LEAs, but they all haven't had access to all the different pieces of the system to see how it's all put together and how it works. And so they will all have access to the system on April 1st, and then they will start reporting on their fiscal 25 data. The law says beginning July 1st, meaning the first day of the fiscal year. Obviously they can't report data on day one. And so the business rules for reporting to the system are set up that they will report monthly by the 15th of the following month. So the July data will be reported on August 15th and so on. So that is what will be reported beginning July 1. And that data, as a result of, the need to report monthly, a full year of data will be available in September of 2025, or really even early October of 2025, because there is a closeout period after. So the fiscal year ends June 30th, and then both at the state level and at the local level, there is a closeout period where agencies are, dotting all their I's and crossing their T's around the fiscal year closeout. And so that data is not available until end of September, when their financial audits and all the data is sort of locked down. So that is when, so September of 2025 is when we will have a full year of baseline data on school level spending by LEAs in fiscal 25. And although everything I'm saying is what is included in the guidance that you would be adopting today, just to lay it out so that everyone in the public and in the LEAs and our other partners, we all have the same expectations. The second part of the guidance around AIB authority and expectation is really just summarizing what the flexibility or that the law does and does not give the AIB in this process. And so the first part actually has to do with the 2024 Blueprint Implementation Plan. So I talked about part 2 that is due on May 1st. As part of part 2, the last question of that part 2, question 23, essentially is asking the LEAs to provide their plan, their multi-year plan for meeting the minimum school funding requirement. So not that there's an expectation that it will be met immediately, but that there is some kind of thought process and decision process that they are planning to use to, over the next several years, to meet the minimum school funding requirement across their schools. And so what the language says is, and I'll just read it, it says, as with the implementation of other Blueprint programs and requirements, the AIB views the first year of data as baseline data and expects LEAs to make a good faith effort to meet the minimum school funding requirement. The guidance goes on to specify, what is in statute, which under the Blueprint law, a certain portion of Blueprint funds is automatically withheld from LEAs each year, and the AIB determines whether those funds are released or not. For fiscal 23, 24, and 25, the law specifically gives the AIB the authority to release funds if implementation plans are approved. So the only criteria that the AIB can base that decision on is whether the Blueprint implementation plans are approved or not. And so fiscal 23 and 24, those funds were a part of the 2023 Blueprint implementation plan decisions. For fiscal 25, it will be based on their 2024 plans. Moving forward, beginning in fiscal 26, the law authorizes the AIB to consider whether a school system or public school has made sufficient progress on an implementation plan or has taken appropriate steps to improve student performance. And then the guidance says minimum school funding is an integral part of making progress on implementation plans and improving student performance. So beginning in fiscal 26, the AIB will be authorized to evaluate compliance with the minimum school funding requirements based on progress made. And so that is essentially sort of in writing how the AIB intends to approach LEAs and consider their compliance with the minimum school funding requirement as we move through this 2024 implementation plans and the fiscal 25 release of funds, and then into the future and whether progress is being made. The last piece of the guidance is around an appeals process. The statute does require the AIB to adopt an appeals process for LEAs to request a waiver from the minimum school funding requirements. For the law specifies very specific reasons that include enrollment shifts between schools. So we staff has been starting to work on what those criteria and the appeals process could look like. And we will be sharing draft with you all in the next month. We do want to also get feedback. So we want to make sure that we build time into this appeals process to develop a draft, share it publicly, get input and feedback before it is adopted. So we will be working on that over the next month or so to develop a draft for that process.
Okay.
And that's it.
All right. Thank you. An awful lot of work still to go. And thank you again and the staff for following through all of this and giving us some options in terms of how we can weed our way through the minefield here of the different and conflicting consideration. But it's a challenge. And as I've indicated before, at this time of the year, less than a month to go in Annapolis, anything could happen. So, thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Dr. Kerwin?
Yes.
I think.
Rachel, could you say a little bit more about good faith effort? In particular, is that time limited? In other words, does a point in time come when, unless something's been appealed and approved, they would have to be in compliance? Good faith effort, I assume, means that if they're working towards the goal, they might not quite be there yet, but they've got a plan and they're working towards it. Is that how you would interpret good faith effort?
So in the guidance, good faith effort is used specifically around the first year of data, being reported for fiscal 25. And so the LEAs have a deep concern that the expectation is that all of their schools will meet the minimum school funding requirement in the first report.
And we're not saying that.
We're not saying that. We're saying that we treat the first year of data as baseline data. And that the expectation is that LEAs will make a good faith effort to meet the minimum school funding requirement in the first year.
But the second year, there's no good faith effort in the language. Is that correct?
That is correct. There is no language about good faith in the second year, but the frame of it is we're going to get the baseline data. We expect a good faith effort to meet it in as many schools as you can. And I know that the superintendents and their chief financial officers have been, working, diligently to do that. And then moving beyond fiscal 25, if we're going to treat fiscal 25 as a baseline year, we're going to look at, what proportion of schools are meeting it, what proportion aren't, maybe what, at the aggregate level, how well is the system doing? And then moving forward, we're going to look for progress. And that will be up to the AIB to determine how much is enough progress year to year in meeting the minimum school funding requirement. As well as whether, as you said, looking at the plan that they submit in their 2024 plan and, whether the plan that they submit is approvable, and then B, whether, how well they're implementing their plan.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? If not, I think that concludes it for our, anything else for our regular session here? I'm trying to look to make sure.
We need to take a vote
Yes.
to adopt
Yeah.
the guidance.
Okay. Could you read the motion on that? I think we talked about earlier. Of the
Yes. So the motion is to adopt the AIB policy guidance on the blueprint minimum school funding requirement.
okay. I so move. The second to the motion.
Second.
Been moved and properly second that we adopt the motion. Are there any questions or concerns or issues want to be raised at this time? Feel free to do so. Hearing none. Okay. All in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposition? Hearing none, the motion is so adopted.
That was the final item on the agenda.
I think we're going to go to closed session. So will someone read the motion for our consideration of closed session now?
Certainly, I'd be happy to.
Okay.
For its last agenda item, the board expects to perform an administrative function, receive legal advice, and discuss a personnel matter. Pursuant to sections 3-103 and 3-305B1 and B7 of the General Provisions article of the Annotated Code of Maryland, the motion is to close this meeting and then subsequently to adjourn from the closed session.
I so move. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Moved and properly second. We move to the executive session. Any question, comments? Hearing or saying none, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposition? Hearing none? Okay, we're gonna take maybe 10 minutes. It's 3:35 and we'll start at that point in time for closed session. 10-minute break and we'll come right back. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.